Hey everyone, how's it going today and welcome to another episode. So there are a lot of things going on inside of our country right now when it comes to the world of unemployment, the job market, the labor market, finding work, finding a job, especially a very high reasonably quality job. Because the reality is that most people have known, and we've already seen it over the last couple of years, we have seen a lot of people all over the internet in our daily lives that are now currently struggling to find a work or to find a job, but especially a reasonably good quality job. Because keep in mind is that there are some jobs, it's already one thing to struggle to just find a job in general. It's another thing to try to find a job that's actually relatively good quality. And by good quality, if we're talking about a job that people actually genuinely enjoy being around. Whether this is a job that people enjoy because of the lifestyle it can create, because of the money you can potentially make, such as like in the tech industry, or because of the fulfillment and the satisfaction that you can get from doing this particular job. So whether you are trying to chase out a feeling, fulfillment, money, a way of life, work-life balance, a quality, a lifestyle of some kind, finding a quality job is going to already feels a little bit impossible, but in my personal prediction is going to be even more impossible over the next couple of years for many, many reasons that we have to talk about in today's video. So let's just get right to this video. But as always, if you guys want to share some support because we are a brand new channel, like, comment, subscribe if you guys want to. Feel free to leave a comment about any thoughts at any time, and let's get started. So just like we've mentioned is that there are so many things that are going on inside of our country right now. Things such as like the adoption of AI, the increased wages, which is going to be very interesting because we have to talk a little bit about why increasing wages is going to potentially lead to even higher periods of unemployment for a lot of people. There's also the demotion of senior positions. So how a lot of people in higher tier positions might now get demoted or brought down to lower tier positions, which is going to make it even increasingly difficult for people in the entry level side to find work. And also just about the potential recession, how our overall economy is doing in inflation. All of this stuff is going to have a very, very massive impact to why getting a job by the year 2030 or just over the next couple of years starting this year in 2026 is going to be particularly even more difficult and impossible than ever before. The first area I really want to focus on is going to be everything related to AI. So this should not come as a surprise, but in my opinion, yes, I do believe that AI is going to lead to the destruction of a lot of different jobs. We are already starting to see in a lot of ways where AI is very smart and shockingly and scarily and surprisingly, but to nonetheless very, very smart. Even for example, running on YouTube, right? I'll give you a perfect example about how AI can really influence jobs. Let's say you want to become a graphic designer, right? And I'm just using this, and there's so many examples, but I'm just going to use this as an example to paint a picture. If you are trying to be a graphic designer, in the old days, because of what's going on, you used to have to be able to study, and know how to use your graphic design software very well, knows how to like blur the different images, blend the layers, so many different complexities to graphic design. But today, there are AI softwares that can literally just generate a picture, a movie poster, a YouTube thumbnail of some kind by just clicking a button. And it's actually very smart. Some of the YouTube thumbnails that I have on my other channel were made using AI because I run two different YouTube channels. Some of them were made using AI. But it's not just that, but there's a lot of people that will argue like, oh yeah, AI is not going to take my job. At the very least, one thing for certain is that AI is expected to make a lot of companies work more efficiently. So what used to essentially take maybe 10 workers to accomplish a particular task, thanks to AI, you can now accomplish the same exact task using just 3 workers or even 2 workers of some kind, which means that the other 7 to 8 workers that used to work for that particular company is now going to potentially be laid off or left unemployed because they don't need that many workers anymore, which leads to even greater competition in the job market. So the first reason why getting a job is going to feel so impossible over the next couple of years is because of the adoption of AI and that situation. The next thing that we really have to talk about is going to really be about the increase in labor costs. Because of inflation, it is expected that the cost of goods and the cost of labor in particular is going to be going up over the next couple of years. This might sound like a good thing because it means that we're going to be able to make more money, but you also have to keep in mind is that wages have not been keeping up with inflation relative to the rate that, how much things have been costing, relative to how much things have been, or how much money people have been making over these last couple of years. But the logic behind this one is really this. If you raise labor costs for a lot of companies that are already struggling to turn a profit margin, what this is going to do is that it's ultimately going to lead a lot of companies to start laying off workers because they can no longer afford these workers or no longer afford to pay these workers as well. What's ultimately going to happen is that by laying off even more workers, it's going to lead to even greater levels of unemployment that we haven't even seen before. And we're already starting to see it in our economy. But the reality is that this is going to lead to even more competition. So not only are we going to see a massive wave of people entering the job market because they lost their jobs to AI, but you're also going to see a lot of different companies or a lot of different lose their jobs even greater now because of the increase in labor costs and the situation with inflation. That's going to lead to even more competition that we've already seen, numbers that we haven't even seen before in history, of how difficult it will be to find a job in the near future. The next thing that we have to talk about is also going to be about the fact that if we end up in an economy and a situation where they start to lay off people on the upper level positions, right? What's going to happen is that it's going to force a lot of different workers to now, because we know that a lot of the upper tier positions are very expensive to hire, it's going to force a lot of them, in order to find any ways to make money, to try to seek positions in the lower tier jobs. So for example, what you might have, like people normally that used to work senior level positions, you might now have to compete with these people for even the mid-career positions as well. And for the people that are used to be working mid-career positions, because of what's going to happen, they're going to potentially be demoted. So now you're going to be competing with these people now for even entry-level positions as well. Which means that if you are already on the bottom of the totem pole, which is basically entry level, the only thing lower than entry level is basically intern. But if you're an intern, then you can only imagine there's nothing really lower than that other than unemployment. That's really the only position left for people that couldn't find employment to go to. So it's going to be a massive tragedy and a difficult situation, because you have a position where it's not only already, as we've established, so difficult to find a job, but you're going to have people in upper tier positions dropping down to mid-career positions dropping down to lower level positions, and the lower level to the absolute most entry level positions as well. This is going to make it so difficult, because if people struggle so hard to find their entry level jobs, the wealth gap is not just going to increase, but the career gap of like how long, when you're unemployed, between when you lose your job or when you were unemployed, when you started unemployment to when you ended up unemployed, or when you do find your employment, that employment gap is going to increase even greater, which makes it even more difficult. So as things roll on, life is just going to get more and more difficult. And I hope that I don't want to make this to be a very doom and gloom video, but I just want to express the reality of what we're currently living through right now. If you're just a person of an American citizen, tax-paying citizen, trying to find a job right now, whether you're trying to find a job on the entry level side or whether you're trying to find a job on the upper level side, it's going to be very, very difficult. Which is probably going to be a great transition to the last thing that I really want to talk about, why finding a job is going to be so difficult, is really because of the overall economy. Is that because we are right now on a very, very shaky economy, where things have just not been easy, obviously in our labor market, but even in a lot of other areas of our economy as well, such as like inflation, rising costs of goods, rising costs and, trying to make ends meet, tax, dealing with debt, having to, pay back a lot of debt. I know that a lot of, there's been a lot of research and a lot of numbers and reports that have came out to say that student debt, loans, credit card debt, and everything in that world has been higher than it's ever been for most of American history. So because of the overall economy and what's going on, it's going to make it even more difficult than ever to find a job. But the idea really is that what is a solution is that I'd love to hear your personal thoughts. If you have anything down to share below. There are now companies that have and continuing to announce layoffs every single month that is going by right now. We recently saw, I think I made a video on my other channel about this. The company Block, which is basically Block/Square/Cash App. They're part of the branch of the same company. They're a company that laid off 40% of their workforce last month. So if that company, such a big, successful company, is laying off 40% of their workforce, you can only imagine what's even more drastic to come going forward from here. But of course, I would love to hear your thoughts. I do encourage a lot of people why this is a time greater than ever, that it's going to be even more important to try to, I know not everyone wants to become an entrepreneur. I know not entrepreneurship is for everyone. I know entrepreneurship is not necessarily for everyone, but what I do want to say is that if you are going to try to make a living, it's going to be even greater than ever to try to adopt more income sources, to try to build that side hustle, to maybe even build a business out of it, or to find ways to freelance your work. The bottom line is that it's very difficult, and it's going to get even more difficult to just survive off of one income, if you can even find that one income right now, because there's people that don't have any right now because of unemployment and rising situations that have happened. But of course, would love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share any down in the comments below. But with that being said, if you guys hopefully found this insightful, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and hope to see you guys next time. Try to stay employed, but otherwise, just know there's a lot of people in those situations right now, and I think it's important to just know what's the reality of it. So hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys again.